If you like Star Trek and Star Wars and you like ship battles, you'll like this channel. And if you like what you see, please subscribe and make a comment. It helps. It really does. And with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so today I'm going to have a pick on the Cardassians again, because that's what I do. So I want to talk about what would happen if the USS Phoenix, which was under command of Maxwell, went rogue and actually never stopped, or was never stopped by the Federation or by Captain Picard. What if they decided to go on a killing spree and a massacre of Cardassians? How much damage could they do? And how big of a force would it take Cardassia to bring down this juggernaut? Let's find out. So real quick, just so you guys, everyone knows, I don't have the correct hull value. We will be substituting with the Galaxy-class hull strength value. I know that it's slightly off, but we're going to go ahead and go with it. The other things I want to take in consideration is my image for my videos that I'm showing, my little made videos. It is using a Nebula-class starship with the torpedo module, and I'm aware of that. And the ship we're using is not using the additional torpedo module. So the image will show you that, but that's not what we're using. So during the analysis, just remember, it's using that advanced sensor dish. It's on top. Now, this ship does have torpedo launchers, obviously, and the torpedo launchers are the same as a Galaxy class, so they still behave the same. It's just that other version has an additional torpedo module, which gives it that much more offensive capabilities. And I don't want you guys watching this and thinking that I made the mistake. I am aware that the imagery is not matching, but the analysis data is based on this version of the Nebula-class starship. The Nebula-class starship of this version that we're using is not using an additional torpedo module. That's an advanced satellite dish. Okay, so now let's take a look at its weaponry. So it's going to have a standard 2 torpedo launchers, and it's going to have 8 Type 10 phasers aboard the ship. So because of its profile, and a lot of people don't seem to realize this, you can't get behind the ship and then it can't shoot you. There are phaser banks that are located behind the ship. There's a phaser array there. Just like there's a phaser array on the belly, you can't get away from the phaser arcs. It has a 360-degree phaser arc. No matter where you come from, it can be attacking you. The best way for this ship to be attacked, though, would be from its sides, because you don't want to be in front of its torpedo launcher. The reason you don't want to be in front of its torpedo launcher is it's using, I believe, an MK-70 or an MK-80. Most specifications say it's using MK-80, and the reason I'm going to go with MK-80 is because that's the same as seen on the Galaxy-class starship, and this is using Galaxy-class technology and Galaxy-class components. So this ship is able to produce a maximum of 10 torpedoes for a full torpedo spread. So with that being said, that's what we're going to take in consideration. We know the phasers are 65,000 terawatts, and it can fire in one volley 14 times. So it's something like 910,000, something like that, terawatts of damage. So keep that in mind. So we have anywhere between 8 to 3 Type 10 phasers, depending on what variant you talk about or what people talk about. But at minimum, so at the lowest we could give this vehicle its offensive capabilities would be 2 torpedoes and 3 phasers. I don't think that's right. It should be 2 torpedoes and then 8 phasers. But I just want people to know that you can go either way. So with that being said, let's take a look at what's going to happen here. So eventually it's going to run into some kind of patrol ship, and most likely it's going to run into a Galor. Now, when the Galor realizes that what's going on, this ship is entering Cardassian space. It's going to raise its shields. It's not going to hail. It's not going to do anything. It's going to go immediately, and it's going to attack the Federation starship. Now, what's going to happen is while it's at warp and it's coming at the Federation starship, that Federation starship, the USS Phoenix, is going to launch a full battalion of torpedoes. So it's going to completely and utterly destroy the Galor before it ever even gets in range to fire. At best, depending on the variant of the Galor and its payload, it may get one or two torpedoes off before it's obliterated. So why is this outcome? Why did the Galor get taken out so fast? Well, let's compare the two ships. So right off the bat, when you look at it, the Federation starship, the Phoenix class, or USS Phoenix, which is a Nebula-class starship, its shields are 1,755,000. On the other hand, the Galor is only around 260,000. So we have like a massive gap in shield technology. Now, when it comes to hull value, you see that this ship is around 1,191,000. In actuality, I think it's around 890,000, but we're using the Enterprise's value, like we said before. So the defense is 2,946,000, and you look at the Galor, it's 1,278,000. So right at the bat, you can tell that the Phoenix is 3 times stronger in defense than even a Galor by itself. But the biggest disadvantage comes in weaponry. So Federation technology are using, an MK-80 missile launcher, or not missile launcher, but a torpedo launcher, which can fire 10 torpedoes. Cardassians are using something that we would see 100 years ago at best. So they could launch maybe 1 or 2 torpedoes. So they're heavily outgunned when it comes to torpedo technology. So then you got to think to yourself, okay, so fighting from a distance is suicide. Now, Cardassian spiral wave disruptor cannons are equivalent to a Type X phaser. So if you're up close, then they're going to have similar firepower. But getting there is the hard part. So there's no way that any Cardassian ship is going to be able to take on a Federation starship from long distance. So what will happen is they will have to engage this ship with more than one ship. Matter of fact, they're going to need a lot of ships. So let's take a look at how that's going to go down. So we know the response time of at least 3 or 4 Cardassian Galors are going to be able to respond pretty quickly to this ship. So this is going to go down pretty quickly. Now, the Nebula-class starship is going to be able to attack these ships in 1 or 2 ways. Number 1, it's going to straight out obliterate one of these ships before they get into firing range. But because this captain is a captain, in my opinion, he's a tactically sound, trained officer, and he's been in firefights before. I think what he will do is he will target 3 of the closest ships, and he will spread that torpedo spread, so 3 torpedoes will hit each ship. The first 2 will bring down the shields. The third shot will hit the heavy spiral wave disruptor cannon, which will greatly decrease the defensive abilities or offensive abilities of the Cardassian ships. I mean, it will absolutely lower their attack value significantly. They'll go from using weapons that are at the same level to using primitive spiral wave disruptor cannon or spiral wave disruptors instead of the disruptor cannon, which will greatly hinder their offensive capabilities. So basically at that point, then there's just one Galor that's fully operational who's going to be able to engage at close range. Though those other Galors, I'm sure, are going to support the ship, but those spiral wave disruptors are not very strong, and they're not going to do a whole lot of good. And they're going to get obliterated quickly. You got to remember, as far as the firing mechanism, there's not a huge difference between the spiral wave disruptor cannon as far as its power and the amount of the shots it has versus the Federation Type X phaser. So with that being said, it's something along as the spiral wave disruptor cannon can fire, I believe, a max volley of 12, and then the Federation Type X phaser can fire 14. So if I remember right, it's something like 910,000 versus 780,000, something along those lines. So there's a difference, but it's not like super drastic that it's going to be the end of all things. But the big downside to the Cardassians is that really poor shield matrix. Let's say the Cardassians are in the best case scenario, that the nebula comes by them, they're laying dormant, then they turn their shields on, and then they attack the ship and they surprise it. It's not really going to do them a whole lot of good. Because even though they get into range and start firing, they have similar weapons. The shields are so overwhelmingly better for Starfleet ships than Cardassians that it's basically a suicide mission on a one-on-one basis. If you're in the position of the Cardassians, you have to kill this monstrous ship. You're going to need at least 6 to 7 starships. And the reason for that is the first 3 are just going to get obliterated by the torpedo volley. You're going to need those 4 or 5 ships, or I'm sorry, those 3 or 4 ships that survive and they're able to get close and use the heavy spiral wave disruptor cannons that haven't been destroyed. They're going to need to get up close and they're going to need to take down that Nebula-class starship shields. Once the Nebula-class shields go down, those heavy spiral wave disruptor cannons are going to rip that ship to pieces. So because of the Federation shields and then the advanced torpedo module, it makes this ship really hard to deal with because you need basically a fleet of starships to take on one starship. And so there's some additional things that we should probably talk about too. Number one, Federation starships are faster and they're more maneuverable on top of all this. And that probe or that sensor node that's on top of the ship, I don't know how much of an increase as far as sensors go that it gets from that thing, but I would say it's going to probably make it at least a Type 4 or Type 5 like sensor array. So you're going to be able to see way further, and you're going to be able to see ships coming and going before your enemies know that you're there. And you can position yourself to go hit targets and get away. And that's something that's going to be really hard for the Cardassians, is they're going to have large fleets sitting at these areas, and then you're going to be able to just absolutely pick small colonies, or would say, obviously stations, because they destroyed stations and cargo ships. Believe it or not, one Federation starship going rogue could significantly damage Cardassian infrastructure if that thing gets into deep Cardassian space and doesn't get overwhelmed. It could do serious damage. Because that ship, no matter what people say about Federation starships and the peacekeepers that the Federation are, their ships are built like giant tanks and warships. They are absolutely monsters, and they are beasts in the Star Trek universe. So during TNG, there's really nothing that can take on a Nebula-class starship except for another Federation Galaxy-class, or a Warbird, or a Volca-class cruiser. I don't think there are any other major power ships that could even really come close, because I don't think that maybe there could be an argument about a Ferengi Marauder, maybe, but besides that, I don't really think anything else would be able to take this thing on. And they were attacking border worlds, so there's nothing those patrols would be able to do anything. Even if they had a large patrol attack this ship, it would just kick their asses all over the place. I mean, their ability to hit targets and have pinpoint accuracy. The reason why the fleet has to be so big is, on top of the only having one major weapon that's really worth anything with the Cardassians, you also take in consideration that the Federation ships, if you damage the ship's weapon systems, like let's say the shields go down, you destroy parts of the phaser array. It doesn't do anything. Each phaser array coil has its own charger and has its own multi-networking service that connects, and it's still functionable. Cardassians, on the other hand, if you take out the power supply to the weapon systems, their one power supply that's hitting everything else, all their systems go down. And most ships are that way. Federation starships and Klingon ships actually have secondary systems and routing, or 2 or 3 routing systems that run throughout their ships. So newer generation Federation starships, and then most Klingon ships are already even in the past are built this way, where they have subsystems. So there's power generators throughout to keep those weapons going. So you can't just knock out one. Which most starships, their power or their weapon systems, it's being powered from the reactor. So it's being powered from the reactor. Then from the reactor, it's going into I'm going to call it the weapon module, so the weapon system. And then the weapon system is then charging up, and then it's sending it to whatever feed it needs to go to. So if that weapon module is damaged on most starships, then all the weapon systems go down. And that's just how most starships work. But Federation starships and then Klingon starships don't behave that way. They have basically these small energy sources that are all located throughout the ship along those arrays. And then on top of that, the power source that's going to that, it has backups. So if part of it gets destroyed or damaged, it's still able to power and go through its secondary, third, or fourth. And then they're all networked together, so that power flow can flow throughout those different I'm not coils, I guess, and then they can hit the emitters, and then they're still operational. So the Cardassians are going to lose functionality very quickly in battles when their shields go down, and the Federation starships can stay in a fight much longer than a Cardassian ship with the same amount of damage, is basically what I'm trying to say. So this is why when he went rogue and the Federation was freaking out and sending their flagship to go take this guy out or to stop him no matter what, this is the reason why. That ship is so sophisticated, so powerful. They knew it was going to be like, this isn't just a little like firefight that's going to go on where you're going to lose one or two ships. We're talking about this ship could destroy possibly dozens of ships on its own before they could take it out. And this would obviously lead to a straight-on war. So this is kind of the analysis of the episode, and this is kind of like what went down and why this was such a big deal. And then when you look at it from a strategic point, you can see how this ship was absolutely dangerous to Cardassians. And this was an awakening experience for them where they had never seen a new generation Federation starship, and this is what led to them creating Galor Type 3s and stuff, is because they had realized that their ships were so pathetic compared to Federation starships that they had to build bigger, more advanced starships, and that's where you get the Type 3s, and then the Kelton class came out, probably related to this incident. So based off my reasonings and some of the things that I've shown you, do you think that the Nebula-class is as dangerous as I stated? Do you think it's more dangerous? Do you feel that my analysis was correct? Do you think I missed anything? Are there anything about these ships that I didn't talk about that could give it even more advantage? I'd be really curious what your thoughts are. And if you do have any ideas or anything and you like these videos, give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe. Make a comment. It helps.